So it's like I'm out in the forest and there's a satellite dish, and you just gotta fool around with it every time.
Yeah, that's what we were trying to imagine how
But I'm
you were
certainly
adjusting your
happy to
satellite.
be here. Frost heaves. So spring, we're gonna talk about spring, eh?
Yes, we are.
Is that okay? So should I start anytime?
Anytime you want. I already did the introduction and everything. You missed it, but I could do it again if you want me to.
Oh no, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine. So hello everybody. I'm really glad I was able to make it on, and it's a great honor to be here. And I just want to put my heart out to those that are not feeling well today, that might be sick or hungry, or those that are missing somebody. Also to, put out good vibes to the world. You know, sometimes I think that, you know, what makes us really rich in life is just the people that are in our lives, our kids, our family, our friends. And I have a very small circle, but I'm very blessed to have, a small circle of friends and family that, we look after each other. And so with that, I just want to say that, my heart goes out to the world right now because so many people are having problems. And it's hard on us too. It's hard on our people. So Ani Bojo, Mazanapkin go na be in this class. Gonna be a gukshabigaj watin don't bag, noje and do them. Nishnabe nini Ojibwe and Dao. Nimki Ajbekong ninda. Getchin and dam yam p. We can on and guk. Gawin we come and zino and gnak nagin and on in. Uh, it's a great honor to be here, and it's a great pleasure. My name is Bom Gijik. That's an honorary name I got from my grandparents, and it means revolving sky. I was born with the name Mazanapkan Goanabe, which means the animal, the man who can shapeshift into an animal, or the man who turns into an animal that paints the rocks. And that's an old tribal name for my family that goes back a long time ago. And I was named after a man that had that name. I'm from the Fish clan. Where I come from, we have clans. So my government is led by, of course, the animals. And in our family, it's the fish. Other families have other clans that help them in this walk of life. And I come from the place where the serpents are painted on the rocks. And it's a very beautiful place where I come from. I am Ojibwe. I live at a place called Thunder Mountain. And, it's a great honor to be here to be able to speak with you about the laws, the laws of the land, and the promises that we make with the land, the promises. Everything sounds so much better in Indian, you know. And I'm old enough that I still use the word Indian. But I do want to say that it is a great honor to be here, and I was looking forward to this. Springtime. You know, in my language, we call it Ziguane, and what it means is like the water is flowing. The water is flowing, and they say that where I come from, there's an underworld, and there's a world above us, and the Thunderbirds, of course, they're the bosses of the sky, and the serpents are the bosses of the underworld. And this is a special time of year because you know the water starts to break. The Mother Earth's water breaks. Sigwan, Sigwan. The water is flowing. It's starting to flow the same way that my mom water broke when she gave me. So that's what our name for spring is. And they say that there's a tunnel system here, and the tunnel system is based on the homes of these water spirits. And so where I live, there's an elaborate tunnel system of all these spirits. They live under the ground. They have tunnels that go from lake to lake or mountain to mountain or whatever. And so there's a white serpent called Nsagama, and that means like the spiritual chief. And that white serpent has a tunnel at the place called Gamakaming, which means the chief's lake. And that tunnel goes all the way to Mujgadmagaming. And then that tunnel goes down again to Kopkik Miksayasan. Then it goes to another place called Ginebiguksubigajwat, the place where I come from. And this tunnel system keeps traveling. Then it goes to Ginebekniashing. Then it goes all the way over to Skoding, an island. And then it comes over to a place called Bodashkaing. And then it goes to Dashkapkak. And then it goes to Kopkik Miksing. And then it goes to Quigwigzwang. And it keeps on going. Then it goes to Asini Swassining. And then it goes to Matigog Zibing. Then it goes to Wabkakbakak. And then it goes across over to Quigwigzwang. Then it goes to Nadwegojing. And then it goes to Abdas Kissining. So in our culture here, there's a whole system underneath the ground where these spirits live. And maybe where you are, you hear stories about that too, about these underwater these tunnels that go from place to place. And they say that when the birds come and they start to sing their sacred songs, they start to give us the springtime. And how much time do I have, Wendy? Do I have time to tell an Indian story?
You bet you, Isaac. We have the session booked till 4:30. So how long you want to go? I don't know what time it is there where you're at, but an hour and a half is what we planned for.
It's 5:30 here.
So 6:30.
So do I have at least? Okay,
Eastern.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So the birds are the ones that bring the springtime to us. And this story that I'm going to tell you is a story that's it's both told in Nihio Nape in the Cree language, and it's also told in the Ojibwe language too. And so I've learned this story both from Cree and Anishinaabe elders, and it's virtually the same story. A lot of our stories are the same. And this is a story of why we have spring, and it also talks about the powers between the underworld and the birds, the thunderbirds. And so we call this story Atsukan, which means like a spirit voice, Atsukan. And I heard this story a lot growing up, all over the place. And it was always an honor to hear this story. And I was always fascinated because of course, the Cree and the Anishinaabeg they share a lot of the same stories. So I was always bugging people to tell me stories all the time. But this is a story about why we have spring. They say that as Anishinaabeg, as people, we come to this earth and we go through four powers. And they say that Anishinaabeg, we have, that's part of who we are, is these four sacred powers. And we experience that when we're born. We go through we come from a place called Spuming, which is in the sky. And when we get lowered down to earth, we go through four sacred powers. The one power is Skode, fire. Then we go through the power of Nibbing, which is water, Nippe. And then we go through the sacred hoop of life, and we experience the power of Nesewen, the power of air, and Nodawin, which is wind. And then the last power that we experience is the earth. Okay. And through those four sacred powers, we're given instructions on how to live here through those four sacred things. And it's just like, that's our birth story, really. And, all of those things are teachers to us, and they teach us how to live here on earth. And as we arrive here on earth, they say that this earth is like a big ceremony. It's a great big lodge. Wabano Gamagimagong. And in this Wabano Gamagimagong, that sounds so cool. Wabano Gamagimagong. But during this ceremony, the sun comes up in the morning, and our lodge, of course, is connected to the east, and this lodge of life, and we walk through this ceremony in life, and in this lodge here on earth, there's many spirits that live here, like the Mimigwesiwak, like the little people. There's the Bnabe Koyak, the mermaids. There's the Chiganabe Guk, the serpents, the Nimki Benesiwak, the thunderbirds. There's lots of spirits that conduct this ceremony here on earth. And as guests or as visitors, we're instructed to follow, the path in the sky, that when the sun comes up, a red path goes across the sky. And that's a red path. And we call that the Wabano Mikan Gojing, the sacred road in the sky. And as we follow the sacred path on earth, we're reminded by the moon and the stars and the sun how to live here. And that, we're not the bosses of the ceremony, but we're guests, we're visitors. We're here to learn something in this sacred ceremony before we move on back to where we come from, up in the sky. And so, part of the teachings that we have is that, our moccasins, and oftentimes they're decorated with flowers, because the animals, again, are the leaders of our government. And so when we decorate our feet with those hides, with the four-legged, and when we bead our flowers in them, it teaches us how to walk in a good way with earth, in accordance to our original instructions that we received. And that in the ceremony of life, it's very, we have to make offerings, like any ceremony. We just can't go to a ceremony and just not give something. We always have to make an offering. And that's part of the natural laws that I heard growing up. When we want something, we have to give something. That's the natural law. That's what they call Tanakh. And it's a very sacred thing. There's an exchange of presents. If a moose gives its life, it's such a big animal, it gives all of its life. And so we honor that by giving that nation presents. That's why we have have our songs, our moose songs, our dances. We have the special bundles we make for the moose, for the Moose Nation. You know, we're moose people here. We eat moose. We're fish people here. We eat fish. And, you know, there's always a very respectful trade in this ceremony, in this sacred lodge. Wabano Galgamagong. And, you know, I often think about, you know, my life and the life of my 7 grandchildren. You're probably wondering, how does he get 7 grandchildren? I started having babies when I was 9. No, just kidding. I just look a lot younger than I actually am, that's all. But my 7 grandchildren, I think about them and I think about their life and how they're gonna, what the world is gonna be like, what that lodge is gonna be like for them. And so part of trying to restore our our place in this lodge is through Otsukan, is through the sacred stories, so that we can correct the things that we've done wrong as a two-legged, as an invited guest here on earth. And you know, the story I'm going to tell you is about when the two-legged, they didn't respect the natural laws, they forgot about them, and they started to you know, make their own paths. They say a long time ago, you know, we always followed the paths of the animals, and that was a very sacred thing. That the paths of the animals, that's where we we live our life, and that we were never to make a human path, because the animals' trails were good enough. Everything our life we needed was there. And over time, you know, I guess we stopped doing that. We started to make our own trails. But a long time ago, they said that that's how we lived. And I remember one time when I was small, I was sick, and my nukum, my grandmother, she went on an animal trail, and she had a little wooden spoon, and she seen a footprint on there in the black dirt, and she scooped that animal track up with that spoon, and she carefully took it to me, and you know, we said, in Isaac, eat this, Isaac. So I ate that animal track, that dirt, and I got healed. And she said, you know, that there's much medicine on the animal trails. A footprint is more than that. It's a memory. It's a way of life. Those are instructions, those footprints. She goes, always think about the footprints you're gonna leave. So anyway, a long time ago, you know, the people lost their original instructions and they stopped following the animal trails. They didn't like it anymore. They wanted to make their own trails. So they started to make their own trails in the forest, and they started to take more berries than what was needed. They started to take more minan, blueberries, and you know, they started to rot. They took so many of them, but they found real deadly blueberry patches. So they just go in there and, you know, get all these blueberries. But of course, you have to know how to take care of your blueberries. We have a plant that's called bagagamish, and it prevents mold in the berries when you store your berries in there. They picked all sorts of bagagamish all over the place, and they tried to keep their berries stored so they wouldn't rot. They picked so many berries they got greedy, but even that bagagamish didn't stop the rot, and all those berries started to get rotten, and people started to go make trails all over the place. They say that greediness would go from one mouth to another mouth, and it would travel at nighttime. As soon as people slept, the greediness would travel from one person's mouth into another lodge, and it would go into their mouth. And they'd become greedy. The sickness started to spread all over the village. Next thing you know, there was berries rotting everywhere. Everywhere. There was rotten berries. Everywhere there was rotten berries. And, then it was fish. Then people started to take, they're pulling their nets, and they kept getting more fish, more fish, more fish. They had lots of gigawak all over, lots of fish everywhere. That started to rot. People started to think differently. They started to get more wabos, rabbit. We got lots of wabos, lots. Too many. Nesiwak, too many birds. Maoja, this is a long time ago this happened. And they started to kill more moose. In our language, the word for moose is moose. But they got too much moose. Too much beaver. Next thing you know, this greediness, this sickness, it went to another village. They started to make their own trails. They started to take everything. Then another village. The sickness started to go everywhere. The sickness was really bad. Like it. How can I explain it? Like COVID. It just started to go everywhere. But this is something that a mask couldn't cure or fix. Greediness is a very, very powerful sickness. It's a very, very powerful spirit. And they say that it'll fit just in your mouth. It has the power. It can fit right in there. And it'll go down inside into a person's heart. And I remember one time, I'm going to see if I can find this picture. I don't know if I can, but it's a picture of my of what I'm telling you. But the spirit went from village to village. Next thing you know, all the Nishnabek, all the human beings were living with greediness. They couldn't stop it. It became too powerful. There is many good-hearted people all over the place. Many good-hearted people, but lots of people were greedy. And they say that, the world was called at that time Gajagea King. Gajagea King. It means the greedy land. That's what they called it. That's they started to burn big fires, the Nishnabek. Great big great big fires, so that it would scare the animals to the lakes so that they'd kill them. And that wasn't right. Even the plants were scared of the two-legged. They really lost their way. The land of the greedy, was something had to happen. And during this time, there was a spirit in the sky. And that spirit, they call that spirit Babon Nape. It means the winter man, the wintering spirit. A very powerful spirit that lives in Gwaidnong, up in the stars in the north. And this very powerful spirit looked down on the earth because it was, that old man had a dream that something was wrong and that animals were dying, that things were not right. He started to have visions, the spirit, about what was happening on earth. he never really left his lodge. He was old. He had a wigwam in the stars, and he really loved it up there. He never left his lodge, but he decided to take a look outside his lodge and look down on the earth. And when he looked down on the earth, he's seen, uh, all of the greediness. He's seen all of that powerful spirit of greedy go all over the place, and people were so welcome to this greediness. To Kashkewan. That word, if you were to break down Kashkewan, it means like you're stabbing something. It means like you're stabbing something on purpose for nothing, for no reason. And so it's bad, in the language. That's a very bad word. Kashkewan. So the old man looked down on the earth and he says, I know what I'm gonna do. He says, I have the power of the north, and it's cold here. So I'm gonna blow my cold breath on the earth, and I'm gonna freeze the earth, and I'm gonna kill those two-legged people for what they did. So he started to blow his cold breath on the earth. But there was a power here on earth that was just as strong as the old man's breath, if not even stronger. And it was the birds, the Benesiwak. When the birds sang their songs, when the birds sang their Nagamanan, they casted medicine over everything and pushed the old man's breath back into his mouth. The bird's song is a medicine. It's the same type of a medicine that we would get in a sweat lodge or from an elder. A bird song is equivalent to that. A bird song is very medicinal. And so the birds sang their songs loud and proud when the old man was blowing his breath trying to freeze the earth. And the old man couldn't freeze the earth because those birds, their medicine was too strong. And so the old man knew that those songs, he had to capture those songs. A song will roam around the earth into the hard to reach places. A bird song will roam around and look for the walking wounded. A bird song will roam around, and it too can fit in our mouth at night time and bring us good health. And of course, this old man, he was so mad at these birds. He thought, I'm going to go down there. So he asked some helpers, some shkabe to come down. And these shkabe, the helpers came, and they got all the birds in these bags, and they brought them up to the stars. They kidnapped the birds. The old man was happy because now he could freeze the whole earth. He could freeze everything. No problem. And the Indians, they knew something was wrong. They knew that they didn't protect themselves from Goshgalen. They didn't protect themselves from being getting sick from the greedy. So the old man got all these bags of birds in his wigwam up in the stars, and he put them into a bigger bag, and he tied them up. And that was it for them. And then he started to blow his cold breath on the earth. Oh, the whole earth started to freeze. It started to freeze and get very, very cold. Everything started to turn into ice. The plants, that beautiful green blanket of life that we often see in the summer, disappeared, it wilted and died. All the lakes were frozen almost right to the bottom. Only the animals that lived in those tunnels, the fish that lived in those tunnels way underneath, survived. The Westiwag, animals, they dug holes in the ice and snow, and they fasted, and they fasted for bushy tails. And during that time, a lot of the animals got their bushy tails so they can use them as blankets. They prayed hard, the animals did. At that time, it was a horrible time. Everything on earth was starting to perish. There was lots of death and destruction from the ice. The power of that old man was strong. But he wanted to kill the greediness, so he kept blowing his breath. He says, I won't stop until every human is gone. So the animals got together. There was this animal called Ojik. And in my language, that means a fisher. And if you want to know what a fisher is, it's like a small wolverine. They're tough, they're very quick, and they're extremely fast. And they're low to the ground all the time, but they're good climbers. Ojik, it means jig means like low to the ground. And so this little animal, after fasting for its tail, its bushy tail, it thought, we have to do more. And it's fast, when it was fasting, when it was praying, it was told, by the stars. The stars told that fisher, you go around to all the nations and give tobacco to them, and invite them to a sacred meeting, invite them to a sacred council meeting, and have a talk. Have a very good talk, and and talk about things. And so that's what that fisher did, that animal. It went around, to all the different animals that were surviving. Some animals didn't survive, some nations didn't survive, but some did. So it went around with sema, with tobacco, and it gave it to all these different animals. Even went to the Anishinaabe, went to the humans, gave them tobacco and said, let's meet in 4 days, and we'll talk about how we can save the earth. Well, sure enough, 4 days came, and Fisher had made a fire. And out of the darkness, one by one, all these animals came for a sacred council meeting. Lots of them came. And the animals wore birch bark. I don't know how to say it in the English. Nabikwitsanan, like a neck thing. Picture on a piece of birch bark. They wore all the plants. Even the plants were represented. The animals were speaking for the plants too. They were their speaker, because all the plants were gone almost, except some trees. So the animals came. Next thing you know, in the sacred council meeting, there was thousands of animals. Thousands and thousands. There's lots and lots. There was so many animals that you couldn't count them all. But not one human being came. They felt ashamed. They didn't go to this meeting because they were the ones that started this whole shenanigans. So they didn't want to go. And what they said was that even though the Nishnabek, the people, all they had to do was stop being greedy, it could have reversed everything. It could have prevented everything. At that time, all they did was hoard everything. They became worse. They say that when we're struggling, when we have a hard time, we share with everybody. That way, everybody gets the same. But that's not what the people did at that time. They just hoarded everything, and they didn't want to go to that meeting because they didn't want to share with anybody. Because that greediness, was so bad with them. So the animals talked, for many days. They talked. They went around. They talked about lots of things, and it was agreed that 4 animals were going to go on a sacred quest to save the earth. This warrior's mission to save the everything. And of course, those 4 animals that were chosen were the gawk, the porcupine. A porcupine is an unlikely hero because a porcupine can't even jump over a finger. Like a porcupine can't even jump over a stick. Like it's like the most unlikely hero, but it was the first one that volunteered to go on this mission. When those old animals, when the elders of those animals said, "Who wants to go?" Porcupine, "I'll go right now. I'm ready." And they said, "Now how?" And then they asked, you know, "Who else?" And the animals looked at, those elders looked at all those animals. And Otter, the gig, said, "I'll go. I'll go on this warrior's quest to save the earth." And all of a sudden, Bijou, the lynx, said, "I'll go." And then the elders looked at Fisher, "Quintam, your turn. You go." And Fisher said, "Now, I'll go too." The elders wanted that Fisher to go because it's the one that initiated the meeting, the sacred meeting. It's the one that, that had the vision. So it had to go. And what it was decided was, they knew, they understood that what they were asking for was a lot. They were going to climb to a high mountain, and once they got to that top of that mountain, they were going to jump into the stars, zigzag across the stars, distract that old man that was blowing his cold breath and freezing everything, and get those birds back, rescue those birds, bring them back down to earth so they could sing their sacred songs and heal everything. That's what the plan was. And then try to negotiate with, that old man, Babon Nene. Try to negotiate with him, to make a deal so that he could stop blowing his cold breath and killing everything. So that's what happened. They decided to do that. So those 4 animals left into the darkness on that cold wintering night. It was so cold, the wind was blowing. It was one of those nights where you don't even know which way the wind is coming from. It just hits you in the face hard, and it's so cold. It was hard to breathe, and the snow was deep, and the ice was sharp. But there they were, the 4 of them. They started to go up Ojbekong, a mountain. Ojbek. They started climbing. And it took them a long time to get to the top of that mountain. But, they're strong, and They have strong hearts. If you have a strong heart, you can climb anything. If you have a strong heart, you can do anything. And they had strong hearts. They knew they couldn't let their kids down. And they say that Fisher had a little child, and the little child told the Fisher before it left, "I'm very cold. Please help me." So that was going on in the animals' minds as they were traveling up this mountain. That's what gave them the power to do that, was they had a strong heart. And finally they made it to the top. They made it right to the very top. And there they were on top of that mountain. And they looked up at all the stars. They looked at all of them. And Uncle Cunning Gojing, they looked at seeing them, all those stars hanging there. And they thought, well, Porcupine can't jump, so the rest of us can probably jump up there, but Porcupine can't. So they grabbed Porcupine by the arms and legs. Like when you're little kids and you're like grab your brother by the arms and legs and you throw them, eh? That's what I used to do anyway. It's probably a bad kid. But anyway, that's what they did with Porcupine, with Gawk. Porcupine was going all the way up into the stars. It just about got to the star world. When it hit something, it hit a power. Gizik Dong. That's what that power is called. Gizik Dong. It hit that power and it couldn't make it through into the star world. Once it hit that power, it came back down to the earth. When that porcupine landed, it busted its hands and feet. They were broken. And of course, that porcupine wobbled off that mountain, injured. And that's why porcupines, when we see them, their hands and feet are all swollen. It looks like they're broken. They wobble when they walk. It's to remind us of what happened a long time ago, when we got greedy, when we wanted to have everything. The next animal to make that sacred jump was Nagig, the otter. Nagig is a very powerful animal, otter. Very good swimmer, smooth, and a good fighter, a warrior. I don't know if you ever fought an otter. I did, and I lost. They're tough. But otter, took a jump up and tried to bust through that power to get to the stars. It hit that power, Gizik Dong, very hard. And when that otter, it couldn't make it through, it came down. And when it landed on that mountain, it landed on its stomach and it slid all the way down the mountain. And that's why the otters slide around today. We see them sliding around the snow. It's to remind us of what happened a long time ago, Mioja, when we were not sharing with each other like how we used to. And that's what it was told to me. So anyway, the third animal, the third one, Sway Westuag, the third one took that jump. And it tried to bust through that power. That was Bijou, the lynx. Bijou couldn't bust through that power. And when it landed on the earth, back down, a sharp piece of ice cut its tail off. It used to have a long, beautiful tail. So now when we see that lynx, it has a short little tail. It's to remind us of what happened a long time ago. When we stopped, when we didn't want the animals to lead us anymore on this earth, in the sacred lodge. When we see that little tail, it's a reminder that, we're not fully living our life the way that we're supposed to, that we have to get back on that sacred trail where the animals are our leaders, where the animals are the gamach, the chiefs. So anyway, there's only one animal left. That's Fisher. And Fisher is probably the smallest of the animals, of those four animals. But Fisher was raised by its grandparents and knew that if it was going to bust through that sacred power, it had to make an offering. So it dug around in the ice and snow, and it found Gidwa Suk, Min Suk. It found 6 berries, and it laid, it grabbed those berries. Ando Begidna. And it threw those berries into the sky, and then it jumped. I offer these berries, and it jumped, it said. And that Fisher, it jumped hard. And as it looked up at the sky, trying to get into the star world, it noticed that there was a crack in Gijikdong. The other animals made a crack, and it hit that power hard. And next thing you know, it busted a hole in it, and Fisher found itself in the star world. It was happy. It made a hole in the sky. That hole in the sky is over here. I know exactly where it is. They call it Bagunagijik. Bagunagijik, the great hole in the sky. Gitche Bagunagijik is a very sacred hoop of life. Anyway, I'll talk more about that after. But Fisher made it through. It was happy. It started to sing a song. And as it's singing its song, it gave it strength. Like, how Indian songs give us strength all the time. That's what was happening. It looked across the sky. It zeroed in on that old man. I'll use my grandpa here. I don't know how to make right there. There's my Muslim right there. But it looked at that old man's wigwam, and Jesus, there was a big crane, big jajak, a big crane guarding that wigwam. Nobody knows why that crane decided to be a guard. Maybe because it would have a better life than being in the bag. But that crane decided to be a guard for the old man to make sure nobody would take those birds. That chachachak, big crane. It has a big mouth, a crane inside of its stomach. They call that gatay. Inside of its stomach, there's a big airbag there. When a crane breathes in, that airbag gets big. And then the muscles push down. Gah! And the way that the crane's throat is made looks like this. When the air goes through that, it screams loud. You can hear a crane a long ways. That's probably why it was chosen. So Fisher knew that. Well, I got to be careful. I can't just go over there and bug that crane. It's going to say something. It's going to yell. And the old man is going to know that I'm trying to steal those birds. So Fisher went down Bagunogijik, the hole in the sky, and started to roam the earth. And it found some treetops sticking out of the ice. And it started to get some Galandak Bigyu, some spruce gum. started to grab all that spruce gum from those treetops. Real sticky. Climbed up through Buganogizik, the hole in the sky. Started to travel down Jibai Mikan, the spirit path in the sky, and started to travel down. There's another trail that branched off, and it started to follow that trail towards Babone's wigwam in Guednang. And, it was getting closer, and it stopped and stood still for a long time, very still, and just watched. Watch that big crane. A good hunter will sit there. That's why when we were kids, I often say we weren't allowed to have a voice, it seemed like, when we were kids. Hey, don't talk. It's not your turn to talk. Let the adults speak, They're training us to keep still, keep quiet. Because you have to be like that to be a good hunter. So that's how Fisher was disciplined like that. Fisher knew that, it studied that crane, when it turned around, how it moved, where it was staring, where it was felt comfortable. And Fisher sat there, didn't say a peep, not a single word, and watched that bird. And finally, it made its move. Of course, it had a pattern. Everything has a pattern. So the bird would turn this way, and then it would turn this way, and that big crane would do what a big crane does when it's being a guard, I guess. I don't know. But that Fisher knew its pattern and was able to sneak right behind it. Crane turned around and opened up its great big mouth. It was ready to scream. It took a big breath. Big stomach opened up. Those muscles were ready to push down, and that bird was ready to scream its big noise. And as its mouth was opened up, Ojig, that Fisher, grabbed that Gowanduck Bigu, that spruce gum, and shoved it right into the crane's mouth. that spruce gum went right down in here. It tried to scream, tried to push down on that airbag, tried to scream. Nothing came out. It was flapping its wings. Finally, all of a sudden, go! The little spruce gum, gave way inside there. And it made that little noise. Go! Right away, the old man, the wintering spirit, knew something was wrong. That it heard that noise. It knew that maybe somebody was outside, that maybe something was after those birds. So it turned around, and started to dig around for its bow and arrow. Finally, he found his arrows. He found his bow. Oh, he's happy. He's going to kill whoever was outside. And as he turned around to go outside, the bag of birds were gone. Fisher had already made itself inside that wigwam. It was already inside that wigwam and grabbed all of those birds and, jetted across the sky towards Buganogizik, the great hole that hangs above us. Of course, the old man was mad. But Fisher got to Buganogizik and opened up those bags of birds, started to untie them. All those birds started to go down to the earth. Fisher was so happy. Those birds were just starting to fly all over the place. They were just fluttering everywhere, singing their medicine songs. Those are powerful songs. As the birds were flying, the songs were also flying. The songs were also soaring and floating around, you know. Babamamash. Babamamashnik is what they call that. Those songs were going all over the place, doing their good work. Fisher just kept pouring those birds, smiling, happy. And all of a sudden it heard a noise. A very, very powerful noise. A noise that would even ring through the ages even now. The noise I'm talking about is the snapping of the old man's bowstring. The old man had him lined up with the bow and arrow. You know, shot one arrow at him. And his arrows were strong. They could go to the end of the earth, no problem, and they always hit their mark. Fisher tried to jump. It knew that arrow was coming, but that arrow got Fisher right in the tail. Because those arrows are so strong, Fisher couldn't outlast the power of that arrow. And of course, Fisher died right there in the sky by one single shot into the tail, into its blanket. And it rolled over and it died. And there it laid upside down in the stars. Oh, the old man was happy. The old man knew all he had to do was go down to the earth again. Get all those Benesiwak, those birds, put them in a bag, put them in his wigwam again, and then blow his breath. There was going to be no more heroes. There was going to be no more council meetings. You know, everybody was suffering. There was going to be no more attempts to try to save everything. The old man knew that, and he was happy. So he went back into his wigwam. You know, he got a nice big bag. And as he was leaving, all of a sudden a noise came, a mysterious noise. This noise was something that he never heard before. All of a sudden, you know, 6 spirits. And Gudwa say Manadok, 6 spirits came down. They started to lower themselves, napping. As they lowered themselves, they revealed that they had a berry in each of their hands. These spirits were the powers of the universe. Remember the berries that Fisher threw up in the air? The offerings. Those were the berries. And as those spirits lowered themselves, you know, they said, you know, we are the powers of the universe. Wabanang and Dishnakas. No, Jaonang and Dishnakas. Apingish Mok and Dishnakas. Koedanang and Dishnakas. They introduced themselves, who they were. We're the power of the universe. And we were watching everything from a distance. We seen how the human being, the Anishinaabe, how they lost their way. We seen how they became infected with the greediness, that they didn't use their medicines to protect themselves, that they didn't, you know, listen to their grandparents. They didn't listen to their parents, and how they started to just try to destroy everything. We seen how the human being went on a quest to destroy everything. But we also seen how the animals tried to save everything, how they held council, how they gave offerings. And it's not fair, they told Baboon Nene. It's not fair that you're killing those animals. They never did nothing wrong. You're killing all of the sacred, that beautiful green blanket of life that we placed on earth for them. You know, you you destroyed that. That's not right. And for you to take those birds, those songs have a purpose on earth. Those bird songs have a very important role. They provide healing for many things. But we also know why you wanted to kill the humans. So we made up our mind what we're gonna do. You know, for part of the time, you can blow your breath and you can freeze them so that they'll be reminded, they'll be humbled to know that they have to share what they have, that they can't take more than what is needed, that they, will respect the Tanakh Negev and on the sacred laws, that they will respect the animals and the waters and the plants, and that they'll never ever be greedy again and try to destroy everything. So you can blow your breath as a reminder for them. And when you stop, we're going to let the birds come down. And Shkak McQuay, the earth's water will break. And water will come through Buganogijic, the great hole in the sky. And the birds will sing. They'll sing their songs the same way that a baby will cast its first voice into the world. And life will flourish on earth. And in the fall time, it'll go back. And to commemorate Fisher for what it's done, we'll turn Fisher into stars. And they turn Fisher, that little animal, into the Big Dipper. 7 sacred stars hanging in the sky. So in the springtime, you'll see the Big Dipper come up like this. And of course, water goes through that sacred hoop and gushes through and comes to the earth. And of course, babies are born at that time. And the birds sound their first breath. Our bodies, our mom's bodies, when we're born, it's just duplicating what's already happening bigger in nature already. And that's why we have spring. It's a very powerful time of year. And that's what I was told anyway. And so at this time of year, the thunderbirds are happy. So they start to come. And they're going to feast on the big snakes. And the big snakes are happy because they're going to feast on the eggs of the thunderbirds. So thunder happens. It breaks up the ice. The Bibisquanang, the skies turn into rain and everything changes. It's a very powerful time of year. And they say that, during this time, it's a time of renewal. It's a time of giving thanks. It's a time of working hard, praying, all those things. Ziguan, there's a spirit called Ziguan. Ziguan is a very powerful lady that lives in the lake. And, in the wintertime, she sleeps. She sleeps, hibernates in a hole in the ground in the bottom of the lakes. But in the springtime, she wakes up. The sun wakes her up. The power of Wabano wakes her up. And, the birds, she summons the birds. The birds come and they sing their sacred songs. So this is a time when we listen for those birds and we get medicine from them. We get help from those birds. And that's why our people decorate ourselves with their feathers, like that guy. um, we decorate ourselves with feathers to remind us that we're pitiful and that we need help. And I often think about that story about why we get spring and the rebirth of everything. And I think about, the story that we're in now. I have no doubt in 1,000 years from now, they're going to look back at this time in history and they're going to tell this story, this sacred Otsukan of when the humans try to destroy the earth. We're in a very sacred story now. And guess who's the characters of that story? It's us. It's the animals. It's the trees. It's the birds. The two-legged are on a quest to destroy everything. And sometimes I think that, as Anishinaabe people, what are we supposed to do? We've been battling genocide and oppression, environmental destruction to our homelands on a catastrophic scale. What are we supposed to do? It almost seems like impossible. Like there's nothing we can do now. But if it wasn't for the strong back of Porcupine, if it wasn't for, Otter's determination and strong will, and for the strong back legs of Lynx, Fisher never would have been able to bust through Gijikdong. Every single thing that we do right now is going to make a difference. Everything we do right now is going to, of course, live and breathe and have a spirit for the next generation. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. So we must never give up hope. In the same way that they threw Porcupine up, we too have to lift each other up. We have to support each other. We have to support our young people. We have to build each other up, strong, unify. We have to put our differences aside because the world is changing fast. We are an Otsukan. Mark my words. Believe me when I say we are in a sacred story right now. And always remember that it was the offering of 6 berries that saved everything. Never stop praying and believing. Never stop, doing the ceremonies. That's going to help. And that's how I know the story of how spring came to be and why it's the way it is. And again, it's a Cree Ojibwe story that's interchangeable between the two tribes. And I think that right now there's a resurgence happening with our people. And in 50 years we have to think ahead. In 50 years, are we going to have elders that are fluent in our language? Are we going to have elders that know the land and the stars like the back of their hand? That know these stories? That know how to survive? Yes, they are. We are going to have elders in 50 years that know how to do that stuff. Because we're going to break through the chains of colonialism. And we're going to be liberated through our own spiritual practices. And we're going to start returning back to, Chinakdege and Innan and the natural laws. There's a movement happening right now. The story's already started. And I want to thank you for having me here to be able to tell that story, this powerful story about the springtime. This story doesn't belong to me. I tell the story on behalf of David Roberts, a very respected Cree elder a long time ago. He died a long time ago. And from Johnny Gigwich, very respected Anishinaabe elder who is my grandfather. My grandmother also told the story, Viola Jingwak. So this story is their story. I'm just telling it on behalf of them, and I want to honor them. And I want to honor you too for, for taking the time to listen. At this time, does anybody have any questions or comments?
I can stop the recording and the live just so people are more comfortable to ask questions, maybe.
Sure.